Hi, I'm Phyllis, southernfrugal.com. Today I wanted to share with y'all the 1950s grammar school. And I know things are completely different now, but back then we had some pretty stiff rules. So we had been in Virginia, that's where I was born, and my daddy worked in the Newport News Shipbuilding and Dry Dock Company during the war. And during the war, they had saved, he and my mom had saved up enough money to build a house in North Carolina. So we moved back to North Carolina. And that's where I first started school. So I remember going to kindergarten, and it was only half a day, and I don't think it was required because we only had, I think there were 10 little kids in my kindergarten class. And after that, then of course first grade, you were required to come. And so there were about 20 students in my first grade class. And that would have been in North Carolina in a small little country school, really. And I think it had grades, really kindergarten, I think, through the maybe 6th grade. I'm not sure about that, though. But anyway, so we were still had to wear undershirts. I know some of y'all are going to remember that. I remember hating it because I thought only babies wore underwear shirts, you know, the kind that had the little sleeves and all, had to wear them under your clothes. And so you had to, the little girls had to wear dresses, and the little boys had to wear some kind of pants other than blue jeans, and they also couldn't wear those little t-shirts. They had to wear like a regular button-up shirt. And of course we had to wear the socks and the shoes. And you certainly couldn't wear sandals to school, that wasn't allowed. So anyway, I went to school in that little small school for kindergarten and the first grade. Now, the first grade, there were about 20 students, and we sat in 2 long rows, and on the other side of the same classroom was the second graders, and there were about 20 of those. So some little things that happened. Now, my memory is not real great on the first grade or kindergarten, but I do remember some things that happened, and they were kind of dramatic. And one of them was this little girl. I can't remember if she was in the first or the second grade, but she was at lunch the same time the rest of us were, and she had grand mal seizures. And I remember it scared us all, you know, because she started shaking and her eyes rolled back in her head, and she was, I don't think she was there the rest of the year. I just remember her being there a little time, and then I remember her having, she actually had the seizure out when we were out at play period, they called it, after lunch, and she was standing on the porch and just started doing the shaking, and her eyes, and then she fell. And then the teachers came and they made us all come in, and I don't know what happened after that, but I don't remember her being in the class the rest of the year. Anyway, the other thing that happened, we had a little girl in our first grade, and I don't remember her being in kindergarten, but I sure remember her in first grade. And she was just a bully. There's no other way to describe her. She was just a bully. And she used to hit the little boys and make them cry, and she'd hit the little girls and make them cry. And I don't know if she ever got reported for that or not, but I do remember very clearly the day she hit me. And she hit me like in the top of my arm with her fist really hard, and I started crying. And the next thing that happened, the principal came outside because no teachers were out there watching us, which is hard to believe nowadays. But there we were, little first graders, playing out in front of the school, and there was really nothing to play with unless you wanted to play marbles or something. And they did have a swing set at the far end of the school, but every class had to kind of take turns with that, and I don't remember it being our turn very often. But anyway, me and a couple of the other little girls were just standing there talking, and this little girl came up and just hit me as hard as she could, and I remember I started crying. And the next thing that happened is the principal came out there. And we were playing in front of the school, so his office was right there. And I don't know if he saw what she did or not, or if they had been watching her. But anyway, he came out, and she had to go. I don't know where she went, but he made her go in. And he reached down and picked me up because I was still crying. And I remember I thought he was such a handsome man, real tall, you know. Of course, you know, when you're in first grade, everybody's tall, right? But that was the end of the little girl ever hitting the other little kids again. Now, she was still in school, but she never hit anybody, but we were still all afraid of her. So anyway, that was the thing that I remembered pretty clear on the first grade. The other thing was that we were in the same room with the second graders. There were 20 of us first graders and 20 second graders, and we sat in 4 long rows. And the second graders were the ones that were closest to the window, and we were closest to the blackboard. And our teacher, if I had to guess, I would say she was around 50 years old. And everybody knew that her and her husband were really rich. I promise you, she wore a different pair of shoes every single day. Us girls talked about it all the time. And she also wore real expensive clothes to school. But she was a little mean. Now, when I say mean, she carried around a ruler in her hand at all times. A little, one of those little wooden rulers, about 12 inches long. And she just walked around it with her hand in her hand all the time. And if anybody misbehaved, she hit you on your hand right there. Pow, like that. And of course, whoever she hit would always start crying, boys or girls, because she hit them pretty hard. And so I was very afraid to do anything wrong. I just sat in my desk and never talked or anything. I was just afraid she was going to hit me. And anyway, she was really pretty harsh. But I guess we learned a lot because I got passed on to the second grade. So I don't know, you know, how. I don't remember learning anything. I just remember being afraid of the teacher. Now, of course, those things ought not to be, but they were. And so she kept a pretty tight rein on the boys. I mean, nobody really misbehaved. I mean, if you were just doing the least little thing, like even not concentrating on what you're supposed to be doing, she would pop the kids on the hand. And I was sitting more close to the back, and I just always didn't do anything. I always tried to do exactly what I was supposed to do. And plus, I was real quiet, so I know that's hard to believe now, but I was very quiet when I was young. My older sister did all the talking for me. Y'all know what I mean? I didn't really need to talk. She could talk for me. So anyway, so that was the second grade. So along this time, it would have been, I'm just guessing at the time now, maybe 1951, maybe. And so the Korean conflict happened, I think, in 1950. I'm not sure about that, though. But anyway, the shipyard called a bunch of the workers back, because we were in North Carolina now. So the shipyard in Virginia called a bunch of the workers back. And when I say a bunch, the shipyard employed about 20,000 people. So people came from all the southern states and some of the states up further north to work in the shipyard. They paid really, really well. And so we went back, but it was on the peninsula. And of course, there was nowhere to live. And so the government actually brought in trailers that were like what you would see a camping trailer now. And they were the different colors, like a light tan, a light blue, there was light green, and those different sort of pastel colors painted on the outside. They kind of look like the Airstreams do now, maybe a little taller. And anyway, so we had to live there because there was no housing. So we lived there, and I was in the second grade. Well, once we were in Virginia, things were real different, yeah. There were so many students, it was just unreal. So for the second grade, I had to go the second shift of the day which was, I think, from 12 to 4. I don't remember exact time, but I know the second shift started at 12, and the other students were there from, I guess, 8 to 12. And so when we went in, we had, and I wrote this down because I remember it so well, we had tables, like those long conference tables, and there were 6 of them in the room, and like 2 on each side, and then 2 at the end, and then the teacher's desk was in the front. And we had 6 students at each table. So any way you'd look at that, that's 36 students, and we were the second shift. So she had that same number on the first shift. So that would have been 72 just in our room. Now, there were other second grades just like we had. I don't know how many, but that big long hall was, I think it only went up to the 3rd grade, so it was a big school. That would tell you sort of how many. I mean, my guess would be, I don't know, at least probably 1,000 students at least. So it was a grammar school. So anyway, during that year, we had some things that happened that were really bad as far as my mom was concerned. So my sister and I, she had gone into the 3rd grade, and I had gone into the 2nd grade. And so what happened was, 2 weeks after we started school that year, my sister and I both came home with head lice. And my mother was real upset and talked with my dad, and she wanted to move back to North Carolina because we had been living in North Carolina for a whole year while my dad worked in the shipyard and would drive back and forth on the weekend or get a ride with some other men and come back home. Now, it was a 6-hour trip, so he would leave on Friday night and be there on Saturday morning, and then he would go back Sunday afternoon. So when we moved up there, we were all together all the time as a family. And of course, by this time, my little brother had been born. He was 5 years younger than me. And so my mother was very, very upset. So we got past the head lice. And then the next thing that was happened was me and my sister both got mumps, the thing that makes your neck swell up. I don't remember how long we were out of school, but then the next thing that happened was me and my sister both got the big red measles. And I remember being very, very sick. Now, this wasn't the little German measles, the big red ones. And me and my sister both of us were nothing but skin and bones. We lost so much weight during that time. So my mother was just really fed up. She really was. But during that year, and it was in 1953, I believe, that we were still living in the little trailer. Sorry, I forgot this phone was on up here. Sorry. Anyway, so let me just unplug this. Mr. Bucky's got that downstairs. Anyway, I don't know how to cut this phone off, y'all. Hold on, I'll be right back. All right, I'm back. Sorry for that interruption. Anyway, they're going to call back Mr. Bucky downstairs because I'm upstairs. Anyway, so where was I? Oh, yeah. So in 1953, President Eisenhower was inaugurated in 1953 in January. And my dad thought it was real important that me and my sister see that. And so we had a neighbor who lived in a trailer just across the side road from us, one of the same kind of trailers that the government had provided. And so we were in and watched the TV. In fact, I think that's the first time I ever remember seeing a TV. So we watched President Eisenhower be inaugurated. And I do remember that day. It was very warm because it was in January, and it was just very warm, real bright, sunshiny day. And so we watched that along with some of the other neighborhood kids because the adults thought the children should be able to see that. So we were kind of all crowded in there watching it. And then the next thing I remember, because we were still in school when this happened, during the inauguration, for some reason, I guess the kids were home from school that day for the inauguration, I'm not really sure. But the next thing was on June the 2nd when Queen Elizabeth was crowned. And I also remember seeing that. But we watched it on our own TV because Daddy thought it was very educational that we should have a TV. So he got one, and we were able to watch that. So anyway, that I don't remember just a whole lot from the second grade. I do remember one of the little boys, he was in a higher grade than us because we all had to walk to school. There were no buses. And it wasn't very far. It was right in the same neighborhood. And we didn't have to cross any kind of main roads or anything. But there was one little boy who had polio and was in braces for his legs. And he was the only one I knew of that actually, he rode a bicycle to school. I don't know how he did that, but some of the other boys used to make fun of him, which was kind of sad, really. But anyway, so that was the second grade, and of course the school was very, very crowded because of all the people coming there to work in the shipyard, and everybody had children. So that was just, we were sort of the beginning of the baby boomers, and there were a lot of us, and there still are a lot of us. But so anyway, that was the second grade in Newport News, and we finally were out of the trailer. By the time I was in the third grade, you had to get on a list waiting for a house, and we were able to get a duplex and moved in there. So that's where we were when I was in the third grade. And I remember two things about the third grade. I didn't like the teacher. She was way too bossy, and we had to sit in circles. And the best I can figure, there were probably, I'm just guessing now, but I think that there were probably about 40, maybe more students in that room. There was just a lot of children in that room, and we sat in circles with our desk. And the teacher, she was older, somehow or other, I don't know how, but I got chosen to be Mary in the school play. I did. And of course, looking back on it now, I'm sure it was because I had long, dark hair, and most all the other girls had shorter hair, and I don't know why my mom kept my hair long, but she did. And but so I didn't have a speaking part, but I was supposed to look at the baby with great affection and love. And I remember having trouble figuring out, well, how should I look when I'm feeling like that? I didn't quite get it. But anyway, the teacher made us, well, I say made us, she made us want to sand the top of our desk and put varnish on them. And so we had a certain period each day, and we had this little teeny piece of sandpaper that she gave us, and we would start sanding on it. And she said that she wanted us to do that so that we would know to not ever write on our desk again. I don't know. The whole class did it, though. We would have certain times of the day, and 2 or 3 students would go over to the side of the room, and we had our little square piece of sandpaper, and we'd sand for about an hour, and then it'd be somebody else's turn to go do that. And at the end of the year, all the desks in that room were refinished. And we weren't allowed to put the varnish on them. I think they must have done that at night. But we were all real proud of what we had done. But it's hard to imagine they would allow such a thing in schools today. But the teachers had a pretty free reign on what they did, I think. But also the other thing about the schools in the 1950s, discipline was no problem, because I think that kids got paddled. I mean, when they had to go to the office, that's what I think happened. I never went, but I think they probably did get paddled. And so we had very few people in school. I don't remember anybody, in fact, ever misbehaving in school. And I don't remember little boys getting in fights or anything like that. It was just, we were afraid, y'all. we were afraid to misbehave, and also, I mean, they would call your parents, I guess. I don't know, and then it'd really be bad. So anyway, so we'll just go up to the third grade this time. Maybe we'll do some more of this if y'all find it interesting. It was just very, very different back then. You had to dress up to go to school. You could not go barefooted at school. And the teacher just got the ultimate respect, and nobody challenged that, really. But I do think that I didn't have a young teacher. Well, my second grade teacher was kind of young, but I really didn't have a young teacher until I was in the fourth grade. And we all knew she was inexperienced, y'all, and I think we took advantage of her a little bit, but we all liked her, though. Anyway, well, we'll talk about that if y'all are interested in this kind of thing. I don't know. And, let me know and tell me what y'all's experiences were. I'd love to know them. All right, we will see y'all next time for more cooking, I guess.